let's go ahead and get out your violins, and then Samantha, whenever you can, just join us. Let's go ahead and start with Minuet 1. So the things I have there, again, another 3/4 time, repeats, minuet form, and G major. Book 2. And I don't think I put that in there. Let me see with waltz. Oh, I did. Okay, good. Yeah, because waltz may be. Let me just, before I say something wrong. Oh, waltz, minuet in G, and Boccherini minuet are your only three in book 2 that are in 3/4 time. All right, here we go. Minuet 1. Oh, you know what? Let's do this before we jump right in. Because the other thing I was going to cover today was tonalization. Um, so, how has it been? Have you tried to incorporate tonalization into your teaching? A little bit? Yeah. I think. What am I doing? I'm in the wrong folder. I think one of the things, and I was talking with one of with my teachers about this, and I think one of the things that's difficult is you know, when you go beyond the pieces, you think, how am I going to fit it all in? Yet, what I find is if you really use these things like tonalization scales, um, vibrato, note reading, music theory, if you teach them always with the thought, this is to supplement book 2 or book 1 or whatever you're doing, then it takes on a bit of a different meaning, so that when I do tonalization, it always is related to the repertoire. And when I'm teaching tonalization to a student, um, there's always a technical purpose, there's always a reason why we're doing tonalization, and then that will help um, improve the pieces as well. So then I hopefully spend less time um, touching on those things in the pieces. Does it make sense? So if I'm talking about tone and controlling the bow, or keeping a good bow hold, most of that discussion is happening during tonalization, and then not in the pieces. If I'm talking about intonation and scales, then I don't have to speak to it as much. Because then again, what I would do is, like, if I'm what I'm if I'm doing this, I don't teach scales necessarily correlating with the keys of the pieces, because then you'd only teach like 2 scales. But I will always then draw back to say, okay, now let's keep our fingertip up like we did in the scale. Oh, there's that high 3. That's just like in our A major. I try to refer back to that as much as possible. Okay, so let's have a look. Ha, wait. Okay, let me do this really quick. I forgot to put the tonalization document in there. That will take 1 second. All right. Now, I don't think we need to go through the history kind of a tonalization. Remember, we did that in book one. So that's still fresh, kind of familiar to you. Okay. Then we have our open strings. We have our fourth finger exercises. Um, then we go right into um, G major tonalization. Now, by the time, let's see, I mean, yeah, Stella, Calder, Bodhi, yeah, all my end of book one, beginning of book two. I don't have a. It's weird how you kind of go through cycles of levels. Like I don't have a solid book two student right now. They're either like they're graduating book one and going and doing a lot of previews. But I mean, I would say like Stella especially. She has previews. I think this week all the way through Gava from Mignon. So that's a pretty. So remember that with this whole idea of the graduation and the previews, Stella has now all the way through Gavat from Mignon. Now was an interesting because this happens too, like depending on performances and stuff. Like she learned all of chorus for the spring recital, just because she had already done like Gasa Gavat for a recital. She also learned all of Musette because of our spring concert. We played Musette on it. So there was that kind of weird circumstance. Normally I wouldn't do that. But when she goes to start getting book two on the review list, like it's going to be super easy. It'll go pretty fast because by that point, I think she's on Minuet 1 for graduation or 2. So by the time we get to start putting book two on the review list, she's going to be pretty. It won't take that long to do that. Okay. Now, as far as the variations, probably mid book one. Well, no, I take that back. Like Stella and Calder, I think both. Stella definitely does minor tonalization as well already. As long as they're like doing C major scale, probably in book two I would also introduce third position tonalization before they do Lula Gavat. Or now we have to say the Marai Gavat. Okay? That's going to be a hard one not to say Lula Gavat all the time. Okay? So book two really it's first and third position only. And the only one of these variations that you have to be very careful with is the 8 count one, because that's all about bow control, and also 8 counts depending on if you do it slow. Their bow arms can't handle that depending on what size violin they have. And because it's harder to control that, they end up playing it fast, so it's like a 4 count tonalization. So usually I will do the two I probably don't do very often with book two students is variation 7, which is the 8 count, and I never do variation 9. That the 4 to a bow, that's something in book 4 and above. Okay. And really, the purpose of 8 is to balance the staccato bow stroke and then a legato. It's also there so that you get the bow hold set and then add vibrato on the whole note for that one. Okay? So there's a definite technical thing that's probably a little bit too advanced for book 2 students. So you're really safe if you stay up here up to variation 6. Okay? So somebody pick a variation and we'll play it. Which one do you guys want to do? 2? Okay. So twinkle, twinkle, stop, stop, long bow. So again, this is the twinkle, twinkle, stop, stop is happening right at the balance port point. And the big thing to look for there and to teach to is that they get their up bow back up to the balance point before they do the next one. Okay, so let's try that. Would you rather? Do you want the notes up there just in case? That's for my old eyes. Here we go. Ready? And. All right. And then I think what we'll start doing is we'll just do a different tonalization every week just to warm up like that. Because I know for 2 of you at least, it's bright and early there. So, all right, now let's go back to Minuet 1. The nice thing I will say, because I told you I just rotate through the keys, and you can kind of see that in observing the lessons for the scales, but, a huge part of the end of book 1 and book 2 is G major focused. Is a way to say it. So you can really draw from that with the tonalization. And I never teach tonalization in different keys, just major and minor. The reason being is I want them really to be grounded in. It's really excellent for fingerboard geography because eventually they have all 7 positions. They don't have to think about notes, so they can really listen to pitches. It's very repetitive. It's built on the harmonic series of the violin, starting on G. So I think it really, really speaks to the resonance and tone quality for the violin. Okay? Questions, Sinan? I saw the eyes thinking.
Do you teach them by without the notes or with the?
No, without the notes.
Oh,
Totally 100% by ear. And it was funny because I had a student transfer to me last year, and she was an advanced student from Wisconsin. And she had never done tonalization before. And so for like the first 6 months, she kept putting the music up. So she really wasn't listening to herself play. And when I finally just said, I never want to see that music for tonalization again, I don't want to see the book for scales. I want you to really start listening and be getting involved in your instrument. It has totally changed the way she plays now. This, especially like this last weekend or this last week's lesson, there was a huge breakthrough in her sound. She's playing Bruch Violin Concerto. She came to me playing Lalo, and it was way too advanced. And so she spent more time struggling with notes than she did actually listening to how she played. And she had a really timid, kind of skitterish sound, so we kind of redid a lot of things. And how she is playing Brook Violin Concerto is crazy. And the other thing, it's really hard with a timid student, and this is true for book two as well, because you can't just say to a timid student with a timid tone, play louder. You have to look for ways, because you know that I'm not a shy. I'm a weird one because it seems like I'm very outgoing and gregarious, but put me at a party where I don't know people, I'm very shy. But anyway, um, the worst thing you can say to a shy person is don't be shy, because then it makes them more self-conscious and then they retreat even further. The worst thing you can say to a student that doesn't produce a big sound is make your tone bigger. You give them ways to inspire. So anyway, um, she brought Brooke to me, and Brooke was just kind of timid. She went kind of reverted a little bit, and so I put her on a listening assignment where she had to listen to and give me her top five opening phrases of Brooke Violin Concerto. Nothing more, just the top, just the opening phrase. And it was incredible. Then she went back, and I said, okay, what did you like about this? What about this? This. And it was a very eclectic mix. I mean, the young Perlman recording, and so then I said, okay, now take everything that you've done and put it into your opening phrase. It was unbelievable, the breakthrough. And mom is pretty tough on her, and even mom looked up and goes, how, So it was a really cool thing. So, okay, it's nice when you look to inspire a student and it actually works. It doesn't happen all the time, because sometimes I try to inspire and it doesn't do anything. Okay, here we go. Minuet 1. Here's our introduction. Ready, go. Now try one thing here. If you played in this opening measure of Minuet 1, if you played fourth finger that first time, play open E the second time, and see if you can get as nice and warm sound on your open E. Okay? And that's the other thing you have to really kind of. I'm not 100% consistent with my students, because sometimes that E takes on a technical challenge, because if their fourth finger is weak, I'll say, okay, play one E. I'll say, okay, play this. Now use your 4 and make it sound just as bright. Okay? And so that's a good way to work on the fourth finger. Generally, I tend to teach it with open E, though, because I like the ringing quality of that. But I'm going to use a fourth finger this time. 1, ready, go. Okay? And again, if you do a fourth finger there, it really does set up a lot of the left hand position in book 2. Okay? All right. Minuet 2. And this one, I think, with the D sharp and the triplets and the arpeggio, this one would probably, I would say, is one of the more, it kind of feeds every single piece in book 2. I don't think Minuet 2, Musette, no. Hunter's Chorus, maybe. Long, long ago, maybe. But then Waltz, and then it goes all the way, like for the rest of the book 2. So this is a real pinnacle piece for book 2. Here we go, Minuet 2. One, ready, go. Okay. Any questions with that? All right. Minuet 3 again. I think the big thing is the 2 slurs, 2 separates in the 8th notes combination. That's a big one for Musette. The 4th finger placement at the beginning of the 2nd section is another huge one. Okay. Here we go. Also, I think this one, this is kind of pushing ahead to book 3, but do you know how the piano accompaniment for the book 3 minuet is different? It's not the same as the book 1 minuet 3. And it brings a more nostalgic, beautiful flair. I think it's probably more true to the original accompaniment in book 3. But this is something I think that can really, it's this idea of playing a fast moving piece beautifully and not just, like a march. So this is a great one. Does that make sense? So many times when we play, when students play fast, they play forceful. And when they play slow, they play sluggish. Well, and see, this is the way you take the minuet 3. You're going for that more finessed sound without saying you're going to play more finessed. You know what I mean? It's gentle. It's they don't. I mean, some kids will understand the word nostalgic, but I find that to be a great word when I'm trying to get this feeling in a forward-moving piece that doesn't rush. Play it like you're remembering it and not like you're creating it. Okay? So try that when you play Minuet 3. Play it like you're remembering it. And it's a good memory. It's not a bad memory. Here we go. And place it. What'd you think? Did it take on a little bit different quality? Yeah, what I find is that we spend more time placing things beautifully. There's that little bit of separation without it being short and sticky. Okay? Not something that I would fully, maybe by graduation in book 1, but it's definitely something as I'm reviewing it with a book 2 student that I'd want to see. Okay? And one of the, as you watch the videos with the group class and then the private lessons, our group classes are so heavily focused on review that many times, and that's where I put, so I don't have to do as much in the private lesson. And it's, I mean, there's no other better way to say it, but depending on what I'm like working on with students, those they always tend to creep into the group class, you know. And then the other teachers, students just get to come along for the ride. They don't know, but so. All right. Happy Farmer, the dotted quarter, and eighth notes, hooks and slurs. So it's all about the bow distribution in this one. Okay? And think of how many pieces in book 2, you know. What did Stella say? You'll hear it in the lesson, but I was showing her the preview to Two Grenadiers. It's this one. And she says, That's a whole lot of open A's, and that's one of the most difficult things in that preview is those and we'll work on it, but the three sections where it's all open A's with different rhythms, attached to it. And I thought, oh, she's listening. You know what I mean? She's watching and she's listening and she's coming up with something to think about. Wow. Because most of the time when you say, what did you hear? And they say, I don't know. Okay, what that is a clue to me. If you play something for a student and you say, what did you hear? And they say, I don't know. That's a point where I have to really work on getting the student to hear. You know what I mean? Because when they say they don't know, you're probably right, because I haven't really taught them how to listen with that kind of intensity or that kind of analysis. And you have to do that without saying intensity and analysis to a Books 2 student. Right? So, all right, here we go. Happy Farmer. I'll play the introduction. Here's an introduction. Okay? And Gaskavat. I mean, there's so many things in Gaskavat, but the three I really picked that I think are most relevant into Book 2 is String Crossing, 16th Notes, and Pizzicato. Okay? Here we go. And again, as you review this piece going into Book 2, I'm still staccato, moving my way to a more spiccato, but honestly, that probably even more into like Book 4 and Book 5. Gaskavat is a great chameleon piece to review with advanced students, because there's so many different advanced techniques that you can kind of put into Gasak. Mostly bowing techniques, but you can even turn those staccato or the 16th notes into ricochets and all sorts of fun stuff like that. There's that old school. You can find it on the SAA website, but Dr. Suzuki was at Stevens Point, and he's leading Gaskavat, and then one of the teenagers there, he did uppo staccato. And he played the whole piece with all of these different advanced techniques, and that was 50, 60 years ago. So yeah, that is a great piece if you do have like you're doing a concert and you have both advanced and, like, if you have real Gaskavat kids and then advanced students, you can make a souped up version of Gaskavat, for that. So, which gives me another idea, because I'm already thinking of repertoire. Next year is our Carnegie Hall year. We go every 8 years. So the travel agencies are already working on the pricing and stuff, which is scary. But I take more students. So that way I try to look at the age of the kids and say, okay, who needs to go this year because they're gonna be too old to go. So it's like most like definitely like 10-year-olds should go. So sometimes I bring it down to like book 3-ish level. Very few kids get to go twice because of that, because it's every 8 years. But so it's a lot of multi-level performances like that. So okay, here we go, Gaskavat. Ready? And okay, good. Questions with that? All right, we are ready to move on to book 2. So the goal today is to chorus through Long, Long Ago. That is the goal. Okay. And before we start into this, questions or confusion with review lists, graduation list previews?
Like sorry, I do have a question because I'm trying to help my students to have their first book one recital, but for the review session, I didn't feel I'm comfortable with how to like give them homework. Okay, this week you're gonna do that with this because usually they just memorize certain piece and I forgot to let them review that, and then they just don't stop reviewing it, and then memorize the new piece and forgot the old piece, and just like that. I feel I didn't do a good job for telling them how to review that.
Um, well, I think a good way to catch that up is to actually do the recital because they're going to play all of book one on a recital, right? So that's where that I mean, so they do that and they play it from memory, and so if because what I find is when us like when my students get something on the review list, it's there, but it doesn't. There's some things maybe that don't stick 100%. Plus, there's things when I go back to graduate it, I want to do even better and more advanced. But by time they graduate a book, it's pretty much in their fingers the whole way. So use the recital and have them play everything in the book, and so then it might slow down a little bit of the progress. So as they're preparing for the recital, what you might want to do is just do previews in book two and not whole pieces, until they get all of the book memorized and they're ready for their recital. Um, and that should catch it up.
I just I just don't, because we have 17 pieces in the book one, and then I just when I really prepare for the recital, because I first of all I don't know how long, so they already played garbage and already played everything in book one. How long should I take this process to really have the recital? And when I try to review that, right now I tell them, okay, next week I'm gonna listen from 1 to 5, and then after they get it, and after I'm gonna review 6 to 10, and then like that. And still, but sometimes they, oh, I cannot really fully memorize that part, and I got distracted with that, and then we go back to that, and it seems like it takes very long to maybe because they wasn't really learned this memorization from the very from the half. So because yeah,
Yeah.
that's maybe
So
reason.
I think one of the biggest things is to make sure they have the right tools for how to memorize it. Meaning, are they listening? Are they study listening? Um, you can't memorize something if you just play it once through. Okay. Now, if they've been learning things with the book, then fine. Okay, now play it with the book. Now turn around and play it from memory. But also listen to the recording and follow along with the book. Now listen to it without the book, but see the music in your head and then play it. So do things like that. Give them more tools. So instead of because it's that's a scary thing sometimes for students when you just say, "Okay, memorize something." Right? That's scary for me. But if I have tools and I kind of have a process to go through, it's a little bit easier, I think. Anybody else have ideas? While you're thinking about that, I think the other thing is as you make this transition and you do the book one graduation, it will take longer the first time, but then it'll be easier the second time because they're also learning pieces knowing that they're going to have to play them for a recital. Does that make sense? So it's okay if it takes longer this time. And you don't feel guilty that they're not progressing because actually they're probably making more musical um, progress than just going through the book. It'll also make book two easier. So, anybody else? Now, I mean, what Sinan's talking about, that I do the review list, graduation list, um, but they don't do full book recitals until the very end. We do a graduation recital, once they finish book 8, then they play one piece from all 8 books plus like 3 more advanced pieces, and this is my transition time also before going to Mozart concertos. And I made the decision to do that is because I had 3 small children, and I didn't want to spend every weekend going to someone's house for another graduation recital because I had 40 and 50 students at the time. Um, so that's I kind of morphed it into this idea. But there's nothing wrong if you don't have a ton of students. If you only have 10 students or something, to do the book recital, because then you might be doing 1 or 2 a year. I know another teacher friend of mine. She does it where they share a book recital, and then this is an idea, Sinan, maybe. So they share a book recital with another student, and that way it's a little bit more fun and there's more variety to it because like maybe they each play a Twinkle variation, and then one plays Lightly Row as a solo, one plays Song of the Wind as a solo, and then they play Go Tell It Rhodey together. You know what I mean? So you mix it up like that, so they're not necessarily performing the entire book, but maybe just 2/3 of it, and they're doing some things as a duet, some things, you know. And even if they're done with book 1, they could learn a simple duet part, you know. So even playing May song with Twinkle theme, so it can be a more interesting program. It's still the same 17 pieces, but you've kind of crafted it so that it's more interesting, especially if there's like 2 students that are friends, or the families are friends, or whatever. So that's another way to do it.
Sorry, that just bring me another question. Maybe it's not related to the how to teach it. Like you just said, you're gonna go to the student's house to listen to the whole thing. Like first of all, did you charge for that, or like how that works? And then right now, I was thinking to like a book recital hall for this kind of recital, but it's not necessary. It just
No, you can't if you at your school if you have a recital hall, but then they pay for everything. I don't charge, like when my students do their graduation recital, I don't charge extra for me coming to hear the rehearsal. But if they want extra lessons, I charge them. But then they pay the accompanist, they pay for the hall, they pay for the food and all that stuff. I don't pay for anything.
so, but for the accompaniment, when they have rehearsal, dress rehearsal, will you teach there as a lesson or you
Yeah,
don't do that?
yeah, you can
Oh,
make that a lesson time too. Okay. Shay and Samantha, have you guys started any graduation recitals like that?
I haven't done one recently, but I did some senior recitals a couple years ago when I had older students, but when I was in Utah.
Yeah, I'm getting into that. Well, like I have, and this is what I did with these 2 students because I have 2 students that are they play great, but they're not going to go into music in college. They don't practice a ton. Um, but I've known the families forever. I love the students. And so I thought, what am I going to do to give them some sort of momentum to actually practice during their senior year when they're so busy with other things? And so what I worked out with, and these 2 are friends, and the families are friends, and so they're splitting a senior recital where they're each going to play, and like they're each going to play. They're going to split up all 8 books, and they'll do that. They'll probably play Bach double and then one solo. So very, very low key, fun. They'll have a party, that kind of thing. So, and then, but like my student Isabel, she'll do a full graduation, a full, probably, I haven't, she has a solo, she's soloing with one of the local orchestras in March, but I think she should probably do a junior recital as well. But um, small steps because those things tend to freak her out. So, all right, we'll keep talking about all this stuff, but don't worry. Okay, let's look at the information for book 2. Okay. Review list expectations for book 2. Technical mastery of the teaching steps, including all fingerings, bowings, tempo, rhythms, and pulse. Bow distribution and techniques are incorporated into each piece. Now, what makes pulse and rhythm different?
I feel different is pulse like the heartbeat, even you don't really play, it's still there. And then the what's the other one? The
Rhythm.
rhythm. I feel uh yeah, the could be more exact, but with the pause. I feel they're the same, but feels different. Like if one rhythm, I feel it's sort of from outside, pause from inside. That's what I feel.
Okay, anybody else?
Pulse is the metronome, rhythm is what's on the page.
Yeah, and it's the student being able to feel that metronome. Uh, I teach my scales always at 72, and my student Lucy last night, she goes, I don't want to do it with the metronome. And I'm like, no, Lucy, we got to do it with the metronome. And she's like, but I got 72 here. And I said, okay, show me. And she tapped, and I turned on the metronome. I said, honey, you got 72 right there. That was incredible. But we're still playing with the metronome. But a thing that pulse is the inner beat. It's the subdivision. It's the steadiness. Yes, that comes from here. So, and then the rhythm is all the different variations of the beats, the dotted quarters, the eighth notes, the 16th notes, the whole notes. Because what I find is if you don't have pulse, you can't play a whole note, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. But a whole note is. Does that make sense? Um, so that's why I put that different. It's the pulse is the underlying current. The rhythm is everything that's happening above the surface. Okay. Bow distribution and techniques are incorporated into each piece. Demonstration of basic dynamics. Okay, so now after they've begun graduating book 1, the basic dynamics now are expected as they learn the piece. Graduation lists expectations for book 2, technical mastery of the teaching steps to allow for freedom of musical expression. Bow distribution and techniques are incorporated into each piece with the addition of more advanced ideas, i.e., staccato moving to spiccato and extended use of the bow. Basic dynamics mastered and used to create musical expression. So here now it's bumping it up one more level, that all of the technical things are just a springboard or a foundation for musical expression. Okay? All right. Questions with that? Now let's have a listen to and this one I have to get out the purple player. Oh, while it's on my mind though, I want to show you one thing. And you'll see this confession in the book 2 group class. But my group class to-do list or do list? Remember that? Well, and I think I told you, I created that. I developed that. It's been around for like 3 years now. And I realized I've never shared it with the families in my program. And so one of the parents, so it's in the week here, this is our weekly update this week. It's in our weekly update. And then one of the parents in the book 2 class, she said, well, what did we do wrong? I said, oh, you didn't do anything wrong. I said, this is a way to build on doing it right. And it's meant to encourage. It's not a slap on the hand. And it's also my bad for, I said, I'm a hypocrite because I teach this to teachers all over the country and I've never shared it with the families in my program. So now they have the group class do list. They loved it though. They really, I think they really enjoyed that. But now here's the other thing. These are just the weekly calendars, the different big events we're doing, and then links to all the group classes and the specific review lists. But here's the other thing I started putting in. Now, can you still see that? You have this too, this YouTube links for books 1 through 8. Okay, do you remember that from book 1? I can throw it into the thing again. So they have all of this. These are all of the YouTube recordings. But what I tell parents is, first get the Alfred, with Hilary Hahn. Okay? And I put out that weekly update every single week. All right, let's have a listen to Hilary. Now, can you hear that all right? Too loud? Now, what I really like about what she does too is just the exaggeration of the phrase endings. I really like that. She's pretty good. Okay. Now let's look at the information. So, and again, I'm toggling back and forth. I just want to make sure because you never know. You can see everything when I'm toggling back and forth. Okay. Written by Handel. It's from the opening chorus of the third act of the oratorio Judas Maccabeus. And then what you'll find too in the YouTube recording links is there's actually a reference back to this. So there's a link to actually hear a chorus sing this, which is really fun for the, because this one, well, but this book too, I think, is rich with all of these because they all came from different genres and like mostly opera or song cycles and stuff. So to hear them performed as the original song cycle or musette played on harpsichord and stuff like that, I think is really good for the kids to hear. Okay, and there's the words to it. Key of G major. Both Hilary and I like the half note at 52. ABA form. And again, here are individual YouTube links as well that are incorporated into your. And there's the two So you've got here, you've got student performances, violin performances, and then the professional non-violin performances. Okay? So previews or preparation steps, you want to make sure that they can do a long bow, big tone, 4 half notes moving from the frog to the tip side of the middle, meaning in bow distribution, by this point for a Book 2 student, they should be able to go from here to about there on their bow. So the tip side, remember with the way I do bow division, here's the middle, frog side of the middle, tip side of the middle. Book 1 is basically from the frog side of the middle to the tip side of the middle. Now we expand to the frog. Not quite yet to the tip, except when you watch Calder and Stella play, they have albatross arms, so they can get to their tip pretty easily. So I do a little bit bigger bows with them. You definitely want them to have done, now when I say these previews too, these are things that feed it, but it doesn't necessarily, like, I don't want you to think they have to just play the G major scale. They should have played the G major scale. Then the G major pieces, Etude through Gossec, Minuet 2 for the D sharp, Gossec Gavotte for the 4-note slurs, and then these are the actual specific previews. We have 13 through 16. Okay. And this is how you break that up. Measure 13, you work on the D sharp, then go from D sharp to the 4th finger. So even though it's starting with the 3rd finger or 4th finger, you want to make sure the 3rd finger is placed with it. Practice hopping from the D sharp to the D natural for the finger juxtaposition, and then the dotted quarter and 8th note slur. Okay, which is here. But see, again, hopping that high D sharp to the D natural there and there. Okay, so can we try that? So pop 4 on the A, just like you would in the Petzold Minuet 3. Now can you tuck your 3rd finger right underneath? Here we go. Ready, and. Now I can guarantee you it's not going to go that smoothly, because the tricky part is first this, but then this is actually more difficult, I think, because they have to pick up the fingers fast enough to play the open E. Okay? And then when you look at the music too, because it's, you know, ABA, you don't want to give away too, I mean, basically as a preview, like when you're going through that cycle, the next line I teach is usually just, I do then, once I've done that preview, then I do the whole B section, and then I just leave it. They don't really need to learn anything else in there until they're getting to work on the review list, because they all can play the first 2 lines because they've heard it a million times and they love it, right? So I don't really introduce it until we do the whole piece. Okay? So in that B section, even bow distribution moving from the frog to the tip side of the middle with the hooks and the 4-note slurs, juxtaposition for intonation for D sharp, and then juxtaposition of the C natural and C sharp. Okay? Here and here. Correct rhythm for the dotted half note. And again, this is that idea of feeling the pulse. Okay? Um, then in the A section, well, let's play the B section. Okay. Is that big enough? I should be asking myself that, not you guys. Ready? And basically everything you see here is what I would put into their music. Um, and it started kind of out of laziness, but what has happened is now what I do is I send the parents my scan, and then I have them do the exact same thing you guys do. They copy everything into their music. And what I realized is the parents don't understand maybe the why of all this stuff that's in this music, but it gets them into the music. It gets them seeing these things, so that way when I'm teaching it to their child, they're like, "Oh, cool! That's that thing. That's that up bow. That's that down bow. That's that high three." And so I have them make their child's book look exactly like mine. So while they're because I teach the previews from memory. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't realize it, but now, I mean, I can't control like what Calder, because Calder came and he was doing everything with music. Um, but now he's pretty much weaned from that as far as in the last lesson, which is what I can control. But we do everything from memory, except for the things that are note reading and stuff like that. Because it really opens up his ears more. So I know he practices with the music at home, whereas Stella doesn't. But he's listening much more. Does that make sense? But I never use the Suzuki. I mean, in towards the end of book two, in book two, if they do want to use the music, one lesson, and then I play with them, I'll be your music. Book three, it's still pretty much the one lesson rule, because I try to get as many of the previews as possible memorized before we actually learn the whole piece. Book four, it might be 2 weeks. But they also know in all of the books that if you can't play it from memory for me, you're not going to get it on the review list. Okay. So, all right, let's try the B section. And so what I would do, and I think you saw me do this, or you'll see me do this with Calder and Stella, I always play the preview first for them, then we play it together, and then depending on how I feel about independence, then they play it by themselves. I rarely have Calder play by himself, because I know he does practice predominantly by himself, so I want him to hear as much relatively in tune violin playing as I can, just so that he can really start to develop that ear. Okay? Here we go. B section. Ready? And... circle set. Good. And this is, you know how I have that highlighted on all those dotted half notes with the quarter note rest? That's the pulse. D pa 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 da dee lift D, or D lift D. Okay, and I'm still not using a metronome as much with book 2 students, depending on their age, but definitely you can do this with them. Okay? Now, if I had a 14-year-old book 2 student, yeah, I would be doing it with the metronome. But then again, just like Sinan's doing right there, they have to feel that pulse. They can't just hear it. So the metronome works, but until the metronome is internalized, it really doesn't do a whole lot. which is another reason why a good rule of thumb is if you do something with a student with a metronome, except for scales. My students play metronome, use their metronome with the scales always. But if it's a repertoire piece, if they do it with the metronome, they have to immediately do it without, so that way the pulse stays there. Because if they just like in repertoire, if they do it without the metronome or with the metronome only, then they're not really developing the internalized beat. The only other exceptions to that is most, like when they start to do etudes in book 4 with Sevcek and Wolfarth, sometimes book 3, they're pretty much always with metronome. Because I'm using the etudes in Sevcek as practice tools. With the cutting the tempo in half and working it up by 10 and things like that. I'm teaching them how to use the metronome as a practice tool, plus the etudes are teaching bowing and left hand techniques that will further help their playing. Okay? Yeah, it was funny because here Lucy's playing Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, and she's one of my students with autism, and she just had this she went through a phase in her early teens where just was so resistant to etudes and metronome and scales, and so I was like, okay, and we just did pieces for a while. And now she's 17 and she's realizing the importance. But she's like in book 2 Wolfarth, the third position shifting ones. But she learns one a week, and so she feels really good about that. She's super, super picky with it. And she goes, oh, this is teaching me how to be really picky with the notes and not just play what I hear. I'm like, yeah. So she's coming to this realization. So, but again, that's for a book 4 or 5 discussion. All right, now the A section. What did I write? Basically the same thing, except for the hairpin crescendos here. And again, I think I talked about this in book 1, but when you have crescendos marked in the music, for the students, I want them to know where the crescendo starts, where it goes to, and where the diminuendo ends up. So in this case, it's starting mezzo forte, moving to forte, going back down to mezzo forte. Does it make sense? And then you have to do the same thing here. All right, so let's try the A section. Actually, let's just put it all together. All right, feeling that pulse. Oh, another thing with pulse, though, and anytime you do rhythm, it has to go this way and not this way. Because here, the beat doesn't have any kind of conducting. That's the ictus, or it doesn't have any movement to it. So if you clap, with students, you have to make sure you clap in a circle. So the beat has a life to it, like this. And then if you're tapping here, tap, 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 tap. And this really starts to free up too. So if you have a really tight, muscular, rigid student, and they're just like this, like everything's squeezed really tight, when you get them to have this buoyancy to their beat, it really helps the bow arm as well. Okay? All right, let's try that. One more drink of coffee. Here we go. Ready? now, teaching points. So remember, the difference between teaching steps, that's the specific to the actual piece. The points are the big picture items. Common time, dotted half note with quarter rest, written out phrase endings. That's basically what that is. They could have written that as a whole note, and I'm sure somewhere else you would see it like that, but the quarter note rest is really the phrase ending. Legato hooked bows, maestoso, quarter note rest, rallentando. Okay? And now, musette. Do we need a break? Should we take a break to 11:30? Yeah, that's just 9 minutes. Okay? So let's take a break to 11:30 and then we'll come back. It's going fast today. All right. Is it cold where you're at, Sinan?
I'm in the basement, so because they want
Oh.
to be cool for the baby.
All right, let's have a listen to Musette. Oh my goodness. This thing. Try this one more time. This purple. Okay. Now you see when I mark the music A1B, A2 with the highlighting the two second end, first and second ending. Um, you'll see me in this week's group class. We are doing Musette, and I was trying to explain this idea of the Baroque Musette, which is a mini bagpipe, and that the shepherds would use it to calm their sheep. And then I started to get myself in a little rabbit hole because I talked about how they need to be calm so they don't run off the mountain because I wanted to say cliff. And then I was like, I can't say this to a group of kids. So I think I got myself out of it with not too much issues. But so Musette is both a dance and it's this Baroque instrument that shepherds used to use. It's like a traveling bagpipe. It's the key of D. There you have the quarter. I put it here. The quarter note is 124. Really, it's got a half. It's got a half note feel to it at 62. So 6 and 1 half dozen of the other there. Then you have the form. This is my. I just want to share this. This is my favorite. I just love that recording of her playing that. It's just so. It has movement to it, yet it's not You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it, but it's just beautiful. So, all right. So the previews. O Come Little Children in D major with the up bow beginning. Another thing that's fun to do is with Allegretto and Andantino is play them Andante Pastoral. So somebody pick Andante or pick Allegretto or Andantino.
Allegretto.
Okay, ready? Now I want you to play it my style. And I'll tell you what that is based on the introduction. So. Okay, you see how that could work? Let's try it together again. Sorry about that, left you guys in the dust. Okay. Now, one thing, if you do that with a student or if you do it in group class, don't explain it. Just start playing it. Because, again, if you over-explain what you're going to do, then it kind of takes out the fun. But most importantly, this is just to teach them the style. This is not to teach them how to play it perfectly. And part of that, did you notice I didn't say anything to you? And so you had one job, follow what I was doing. And eventually you caught on, and then it was, but then you're really synced into what I was doing, so you can follow better. And the kids do that beautifully. Does that make sense? So don't spend, so many times we try to over-explain. This is something also that's not going to be something we're going to do forever. It's just to get that feel. Okay. Etude for the string crossings. This works for multiple pieces in book 2, but this one I would do 4 notes to a bow. Okay. Then we do the third beat of measure 14 through the end of the piece. So this is the second ending. If you do it separate hooks and slurs, then what you do is make sure that you start it up bow. So can we try that? Let's do it up. Let's do it separate bows. Starting up bow, ready, and the reason why I do it starting up bow is because then you're getting the string crossings on the right bow. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Ready, go. Okay, now hook bows starting up bow. Ready. And again, remember you're starting from the tip side of the middle, not the actual tip. Ready, go. And then slur. Ready, go. Okay. Then the next preview is the third beat of measure 8 through the first 2 beats of measure 12, which is the first, no. Oh, it's this one. This one is all about this highlighted section with the slurs, and here do you see where it says sing the melody with slur separates? So what I do here, I will demonstrate it to them like this. Slur, 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 separate, slur, 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 separate, up, down. Okay? And if they have that little tune in their head, that's going to help them get the bowing correct. Okay? Can you try to sing that with me? And play? No, first sing it. First sing it, then we'll sing and play. Here we go. You guys sing, I'll sing and play. And I'm starting at the third beat of measure 8. Slur, 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 separate, slur, 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 separate, up, down. Okay. Now again, that's to teach the bowing. Would I make them do that by themselves? Probably not. But then as they're doing it, I might sing that with them so that eventually it'll help them. Okay? Can we try it now? You guys sing and play it as well? Here we go. Tip side of the middle. Ready? And slur, 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 separate, slur, 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 separate, up. Okay? Does that make sense? And then lastly is the first ending. Okay, can we try that? And this one starts. And do you see all of these, when I have previews or I have phrases, if I don't mark a down bow there or up bow, what are they going to do? They're going to start up bow. I said that totally wrong. If I don't mark up bow there, they're going to start down bow. Okay? So if you look at that specifically, up bow, up bow, up bow. Okay? So let's try the pink ending or the first ending. Here we go. Ready, and okay. Then the next thing I'm going to do is the section B, which we've already talked about with the slur separate deal, then adding the dynamics. So again, this is also layered, meaning first get the bow distribution, the string crossings, the bowings, then the dynamics. So the musical gestures here in these teaching steps are usually found towards the bottom of the list. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's try the B section. So once I've done those 3 previews, then I go back and we do the B section. Here we go. Up bow. Ready, and okay. Then usually I do A2 next, and then A1 when I work on it with the students. Basically the same kind of ideas. The only thing that you're going to layer in now is the hairpin here in the first ending, the retard in the second ending. That's about it. Okay? Alright, so let's play the whole piece. Great. Look at that bow placement. You're all at your tip side of the middle. You get to eat lunch today. Ready? And we do the repeat? Yeah. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Make sure, though, when you do the repeat, that retard only comes the second time. Okay? Questions?
How would you teach the cut time?
Well, see, that's why here I have the quarter note equaling 124. So the cut time, I would just pim pum pum pim pum pim pum pum pim. Like if I'm not mistaken, gosh, I hope I did it the right way on Monday, but we marched to the beat of this, but we marched in half notes. Let me. That would be a good thing to see. Wait. Let me see if I can find it. Where did it go? Oh, give it one more second. There we go. Okay. Perfect. To the beat. Step. To the beat. Yeah, I'm gonna share it, don't worry. Wanted to find it first. What song was that? What? You. Musette. You got it. It's the cow song. Oh, this is me getting myself in trouble. Actually, did you ever hear the story of what Musette was? I'll let you guys discover that one on your own. All right. So that's, but again, I explained the cut time experientially and not necessarily intellectually. Because later then I can say, oh, you know what this was when we're marching to the beat, to Musette? That's cut time. They don't necessarily need the label on it yet. Unless they've had the theory, they've been exposed to the theory of time signatures and cut time. So if they've done theory time, yeah, you can explain that. But if they haven't, then you don't need to. Just let them feel it. Okay. And can you see when the kids were marching also, how was their sense of this? Some were good. 2 of them in there didn't have me for group class last year, and they study with other teachers outside of the program, and it's a very stiff beat. But the reason why it's stiff is because they haven't been exposed to that. So do I draw attention to that, or do I expose them? Expose them, yeah. Okay, they'll get it. Okay. Any other questions with Musette? And you know the fun thing to do with Musette, at least for the first phrase, and I do it actually for the whole song, because it kind of sounds weird in the second half, but it's still kind of cool. Is if you have students that don't play Musette, they're the bagpipes. Have you ever done this? Let's try it. Let's just try the first play. I'll play the bagpipes. You just play your part. Ready? Ready? Go. Okay. Isn't that cool? Have you ever done? Anybody ever done that before? Yeah. I mean, I keep it just in the D and the A when it switches keys in the second half, and it kind of makes it sound a little funky, but it's kind of cool as well. So, all right, we are going on to Hunter's Chorus. Stand this purple player. When they first came out with these recordings, I think I've told you this Okay. Back to Hunter's Chorus. Oh, I forgot the teaching points to Musette. So, Alberti-based melodic pattern, andante pastoral, complex bowing patterns, cut time, polka retard, and it starts up bow. Okay. This piece was written by Carl Maria von Weber. It's the chorus from Der Freischütz, the opera, key of G, metronome 96, ABC. You see some student recordings, professional recordings, and then you have two. One is Men's Chorus and Orchestra, and the other is the movie soundtrack. Because did you know that in 2011 there was a movie called Der Freischütz? Isn't that exciting? No. Previews. This has the zip, twinkle, zap, twinkle, zip, twinkle, zap, twinkle rhythm in it. Make sure at some point they have played 2-octave scale. Gossikavat for the 16th note slurs. Any Book 1 piece that has a C sharp and a C natural for juxtaposition. The B, A, G, A 16th notes. And that happens twice, and what I'm talking about is here and here. Okay. Here's what I would do though, because sometimes we can overteach this. I would say, play this for me. And if they can play it, great. If it's a mess, first of all, look at their technique. Look at something in their, elbow, whatever, where the violin's placed. Because if they can't do those quick string crossings, most of the time it's because something's off in their posture or their bow arm. Okay? But then you can also do separate hooks and slurs. Make sense? Section B, this is one of the first things I do in here is I do section B for the bowings. Okay? And do you remember, I'm sure I talked about it in book 1, how you turn backwards so their perspective is looking over your right shoulder so they see the exact bow direction that they're going to see on their instrument. Do you remember that? Okay. All right. And this one I definitely do that. In fact, when I have the parents record this preview on their phone, I have them record over my right shoulder. So they're not looking at my face. They're seeing the bow in the same direction that the bow is going to go. Okay? So can we try this preview? This up bow is going to start more in the middle of the bow and not at the tip side of the middle, since it's an eighth note. Here we go. Ready? And... up bow. Okay. Now the only other thing I do is sometimes I will like highlight this measure 12 for the double up bow. But the other thing in here that I think in the publication isn't that great, and that's this idea of implied up bows, meaning that red up bow there is not in the music, but it's really a double up bow. That's hard for a child to see that. Do you know what I'm saying? If this isn't marked as a double up bow, then they're not going to get it. And also for the parents. So it's there, it's here. That's it. Okay? Sometimes you have to circle this one because it's not double up bow when this one is. Okay, and these two endings at the end. So after they get that, I call these the giddy ups. Okay, 25 and 26, because this is usually what happens. It sounds like this. On every single up, but it's the bow's fault. And this is where sometimes it's hard to understand that. The bow is using this, on the up bows we're using all of this energy, and so what does the left hand want to do? The same thing. So it uses all this upward energy, so the twos get high, the whole hand gets high, okay? But that's why. So first we keep our bow big space. And it's that descending whole step from the D to the C natural that's difficult there. Okay? Let's play 4 giddy ups in a row. Ready, go. Beautiful. Okay, then... teaching steps. Obviously, we've just done the B section as a preview. The next, and the only thing we add there is the dynamics. The next, we do the C section with the giddy ups. And this is where the zip, twinkle, zap, twinkle comes in. Okay. So let's try that. This is the pickup to measure 21. And again, we're starting right in the middle of the bow. Ready, go. Okay. Then we do the A section, which is their favorite part, which is why I leave it till last. The bowings in 3/4. I'm not quite sure what. The double up bow measure for contrast in bowings between 3 and 4. Da-dum, bum, and 7. Da-da-da-da-dum, and 7 and 8. Da-dum, bum, bum, bum. I think it really should say contrast in notes. Okay, I'll update that. All right, so let's go ahead and start at the beginning and play through it. I'll scroll up. Here we go. Then the general introduction for this is. But one thing about introductions in book 1, 2, sorry. If you can do them without, do them without. And definitely if you do them, only the first 3 pieces. Okay? Here we go. Without the introduction this time. Ready? And. Ready, go. Okay. All right. Any questions with Hunter's Chorus?
Mark, I just have a question about what you were saying about the intros and I guess the reasoning why you don't like to do them much in book 2 or just for the only first 3 pieces.
Because I want them to start to lead. So especially like for recitals and stuff, I want them to actually, so we learn about our sniffs and all that kind of stuff. So we start that chamber music. And in fact, that's one thing I'm starting to incorporate this year in group class is, well, because here's the thing. It's like a, I used to think it was like a group class filler, which means somebody leads. Because, you'd say, oh, somebody leads. It's the same thing. A group class filler is solos. Who wants to play solo? Okay? That just kills 5 minutes of group class, so you don't have to do anything. Unless there's a pedagogical reason for it. Like for leaders now, I'm starting to do that more this year because I want them to learn how to lead, not necessarily the group, but the pianist for their recitals. And in general, just chamber music 101.
Sorry to interrupt. Will you teach us how to make the sneeze, those kind of things? Because I found it hard for me to
Yeah.
teach.
Well, for the sniff lead like this one, I mean, for chorus, it's easy. It's just a, right? That's the easy one. But the thing with the little guys is you have to remember, I teach them to lead with their bow on the string and to breathe and down bow. Breathe and bow. The up bows are a little bit trickier. Bow on the string again. And then for the sniff bow.
Sorry, this is a dumb question. It's been a long time since I've had a kid in book 2. Does book 2 not have piano intros anymore? Or do you just, like, for recitals, do you just not have the pianist play the intro?
I try, except for maybe the first 3 pieces, I tried to have them not play the.
Okay, so even if there is one, you just tell the pianist not to do it.
Well, you can make up an intro for any piece, right?
Yeah.
But the only ones in book, like, the only, yeah, the Two Grenadiers is the first piece that actually has a written out introduction. So yeah, they do that one.
I guess I'm just so used to the book 1 intros. They're probably not real. They're made up.
No, well, they're not made. They're part of the piece. It's how you would like introduce. You play introduction if it was a hymn at church or something. But,
yeah.
Yeah. Now for the sniff one, so, and you do it slowly. So ready. So. And the kids will like it'll be totally gross because they're gonna just like clear out their whole nasal passage when they do that, but that's how they learn how to do that. And it's a teachable thing. Usually we do it more in the like a week before the recital, and then it's uncomfortable. But if it starts to get incorporated in group class and how it's a part of learning the piece, I think that's great. The other thing that leading does is it really puts the student in control of the tempo. And this idea of actually leading the piano and not following the piano. Or I should say collaborating. You know what I'm saying by that? So when I say not following the piano, I don't mean ignoring the piano, but they're in charge, but then they have to listen and play with the piano. Because that was, as I was this week was in ensemble in the group class, and I realized, so many students play without listening, and we talked about that a lot, was this idea when you're in group class or in an orchestra, you listen forward to the leader, down to your own instrument, and then sideways to your friends. But normally what do? They only listen but what have we taught them? Listen to who? Themselves. So this is like when you have a student where you start a piece and they all of a sudden are like 25 light years ahead of you because they've picked a totally different tempo and they don't really care, and then all of a sudden they finish like 8 measures ahead of you, and they're like, "Oh, That's not necessarily their fault. Because have we really taught them how to listen forward and sideways as well as down? Okay? I think I have to write that one down. I'm going to tell my orchestra that tomorrow. Oh, think about me at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Our little beginner group now has like 36 or 40 kids in it. So we've split it in half because it's just too much for. And there's some gala that Detroit Symphony, their gala night is tomorrow night. So we only have access to one room instead of two. But this is, again, it's a good story, I think, to tell because it's something that we all run into. When they first told me that, I was like, oh, why are we even bothering? They should have just canceled it. And then I thought, okay, quit whining. You don't have any cheese. That was a joke. Do you get it? Sinan doesn't get it. Quit whining. You don't have any cheese. Wine and cheese. Okay, now you get it. Okay. So so I thought about it. I said, okay, get over yourself. Figure something out. So my co-teacher, I said, how about if we do this? We're going to cram 36 kids into one room. Let's put all of their cases in the hallway. No music stands for this week because predominantly what we're doing in that group is teaching them how to read music. I said we're going to do rhythms and we're going to practice learning by ear. So like I'm going to teach them French folk song by ear and she's going to teach them Mexican folk song. And we'll just have fun and it'll be chaos, but that's okay. 1 week, they're still learning something because they're learning how to play by ear, but they're not, so it's not our lesson plan, but who cares? So, and I just cross my fingers that a bunch don't show up. Isn't that terrible? But those are the days when you hope attendance is light, where everybody will. Because if everybody shows up, it'll be like 42 or 40. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, back to. Teaching points for Hunter's Chorus. 2/4 time, Allegro, D to C natural on the giddy up part. 8th note pickup, quick string crossings, and that's at B-A-G-A. 2/16 and 1/8 note rhythmic pattern, and then written out first and second endings. And what I'm referring to there is well, here, yeah, the first. Is that the first time that's happened? Wait, was it? I must be because that's why I said it. Yeah. Yeah, that's the first time we have first and second endings actually written as first and second endings and not just as ends of phrases. Okay. All right, so Long, Long Ago, the original title was The Long Ago. It was written by Thomas Haynes Bailey. Here are the lyrics to Long, Long Ago. Interesting fact, Bailey penned the quote, "Absence makes the heart grow fonder." Long, Long Ago was one of the most popular songs in the United States in 1844. Another useless piece of knowledge that I think is important that you know. But I will say one of the reasons why that useless piece of knowledge is important is Long, Long Ago has had a life, and I think it really You know, for the classical music snob, or I was having a conversation this week with another Suzuki teacher, and she was bemoaning um, all the changes, and I don't know, she's like, why can't we just teach classical music? Why do we have to teach all this stuff? And I'm going, ooh. And but that's exactly what they did back then. Long, long ago is not a piece of classical music. It was a pop tune. It's kind of morphed its way into what we think of as a classical piece of music, but it's not. Okay? So, I've got one of the teachers that's done a lot of training with me. He's right now working on a book of fiddle tunes, swing tunes, because he's a Texas swing specialist that correlate to books 1 and 2 in the Suzuki repertoire. And those are the things that we need. Original key was probably F. Metronome 92. There's the form. And just to kind of show you, tell
me the tales that to me were so dear, long, long ago, long, long ago. Sing me the songs I delighted to hear, long, long ago, long ago. Now you will come.
Now, the one thing you can do with these...
Trump's Project 2025 would take Black America backwards. It would strip away our voting rights protections and bans abortion. Kamala Harris will stand up to Trump and his dangerous plans to control our lives. Of course, because Trump is out for himself, while Kamala Harris is for the people.
So you've got two different versions of the kind of a pop rendition of that piece. You can use those in like Pre-Twinkle and early book 1 for just a movement activity, right? And you're getting that tune in their ear. So they're there for you. I just wanted to show you those. Okay. So again, the whole G major tonalization. Now, the cool thing about G major tonalization in Long, Long Ago is, in the variation, 3D, 2, 4, G is the exact same notes as the end of tonalization. Okay? You know, obviously, you can do the book 1 long, long ago to review. Let me show you something quick before I forget. Another way that you can multi-layer long, long ago is do it in G, but then your book 1 kids do this. Then when we get to this third line, that's the only alteration you have to make, okay? Because you don't have a C string to go down to the D. Da, da, dee, da, da, da. Just play an A. Does that make sense? Try that with me. Let's just do that third line. So the D, 3, 2, 1. Ready, go. The other thing that's good with that is if you play that with the variation in book 2, it really keeps the students set with their tempo. Okay? And it's a real fun thing to do on a concert. Okay? And then measure 24 fingertips over the strings for quick string crossings. Oh, that's the 3D to 4G. Okay? Now, most of the time, what I do is I introduce just the whole variation as the preview. And then we don't do the theme until they go to get it on the review list. Okay? All right. And because if I just make that correlation between the 3D to 4G and the end of tonalization, normally they don't have trouble with it. Okay? Can we just try the whole variation? Bow distribution wise, again, this is a total frog side of the middle to the tip side of the middle. Back, back, back. So the two up bows get us back to the frog side of the middle. Because what happens usually is the down bow goes too big and the up bows go too small, and then you get stuck at the tip. And I'm doing that to demonstrate for you, and you can't see it on the camera. Okay? So usually, they make a big bow on the slur and then two little teeny bows on the up bows, and then they're stuck at the tip. Okay? And again, there, I think it's really important too, if they do that, just show them the direction that they need to go. Let's try that again. Frog side of the middle. Only go to the tip side and make sure you have big energy up bows to get back to that frog side. You know what I mean? So, because you can phrase it that way, or you can say, okay, no, you're getting stuck at your tip. But have you told them how to not get stuck at your tip? Does it make sense? So make sure that when you make a correction, you have a solution. Oh. I have this new crazy idea. I come up with these ideas, and then this is another book idea. Because I come up with all these quotes, and then they're written down on bits of pieces of paper, and I thought, wouldn't that be cool? That could be the opening chapter of a book. Make sure you... My only problem is I have to find time to actually write the book. I had a COVID book going with my youngest daughter because her doctoral dissertation was on motivation, so we were writing a book together on motivation. And we're maybe about a third of the way through, but then real life for her stalled and she got married and got a job, and so it's another one. But if I wait till she retires, I'll be dead. Oh, that's depressing, isn't it? No. All right, here we go. Ready? And oh, really watch your bow to make sure that those double up bows get you back to the frog side of the middle. Ready? Go. Lift. Now let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, so basically in the teaching steps, what I've done is, you have A1, A2, B, A2, and then the same thing here. But now what am I calling? That's a typo. Nine through 12. Oh, I have to change that. That's a typo. So where it says C section, that should be B. So C should be B, B should be A2, and A should be A1, because then it matches the music. Does that make sense? I'm gonna fix these typos, and they'll just magically appear back in your in the folder. Okay. Let's go ahead and play through it. But now what we're going to do, we're going to start at the theme. I'm going to play with you guys the down an octave version so you can, it's all, sometimes too, I do this all the time with kids with orchestra music, especially if the orchestra music's super high. I play down an octave so they can really hear. Because, if you're both playing way up in nosebleed territory on the E string, it's hard to hear the pitch, even if they're playing with you. But if I play down an octave, they'll really listen to match their pitch to the lower note. It's kind of like playing with a drone. So I'm going to play the G string version of this for you guys. Okay? Here we go. You guys just play what you have. Yeah, you're playing the regular one. Ready? Go. Scoot up the variation. Okay. Can you hear how it makes you listen differently when you're playing in the octave like that? Here we go. Now it's not just for intonation, but it's also for the pulse. Here we go. You guys do the variation. Start at the frog side of the middle. Up bows go back to the frog side of the middle. Ready? Go. Question?
Wait, so for that variation, you're playing long, long ago, an octave lower, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just, for some reason, thought you were playing the variation an octave lower, and then I was listening. I was like, that's not what he's doing. Wait, what is he doing?
Well, no, because it's well, this is
Yeah, it's impossible.
A, it's impossible, and B, it's really meant for the split level
Yeah.
performance. Teaching points here, common time, dynamics to aid the phrase endings. So what they have it written here. Do you see how they have a diminuendo here on the 3D, 2, 4Gs here and here? That's really just a nice, beautiful phrase ending and not like playing the G super loud. Lifted bow stroke in the variation, moderato and theme and variations. The other, I've done a lot of whiting out, but I think like in your music, isn't there like, aren't there like diminuendos here in measure 2 and measure 3? No, yeah. Okay, I whited those out. Because again, that's just a musical, it's using dynamics to make a phrase ending. But for students, that's a very weird thing. I would just, for beautiful phrase endings, I like to more just use their ear and not like because sometimes they're still in that phase where forte and piano are kind of mechanical. Okay, now let me Okay, let's have a look at the schedule, see if we can get one more thing done today. Okay. Now next week, we're going to, the first hour, we're going to work through the observation 1 and 2. That is the road to Gasa Gavat. Let me get that out really quick. Has anybody done this yet? Okay. So basically what you do is you name 12 teaching points found in Gavat by Gossett. That's all on that book 1 information. Okay, so you can just pick 12 from there. If you look through Gasa Gavat and you see something that's not there that would be interesting, then put it down. And so so 1 would be 16th notes or whatever it is, okay? Then you're going to go through all of the pieces in book 1 and see where they had 16th notes. And then you just put a 1 by that piece. And then if 2 is finger juxtaposition, then you go through all of book 1 and put a 2 next to a piece that has low 2, high 2. Okay, does that make sense? Then what we're going to do next week is we're going to go through, so somebody's going to say, I'm going to say, okay, teaching point in Gasa Gavat. Somebody's going to pick one, and then where did you find it in book 1? Now, if it's a different teaching point than you found, then write it down, okay? But it's a pretty exhaustive list because from all the times that I've done this, and I add to my teaching points, That's how many teaching points that have been found in Ghazi-Gavad. Okay? That's more than 12. So you can do two things. What I would suggest is find the teaching points without looking at this first, and then double check your list with this list and see if there's something that you found that was new or different. And you don't have to find something new. This is pretty exhaustive. Okay? All right, does it make sense? And then search through the rest of book 1 to find where those teaching points occurred before. Okay? Because the whole idea of this is to find the cumulative effect of studying all of book 1 that leads to Ghazi-Gavad. Because, the old story is, oh, Ghazi-Gavad is so hard, we just skip it. It should be in book 2. And what I realize is, no, it's perfect for book 1 because it's really the culmination of all of book 1, if taught correctly. Okay? So that's the first homework. Yeah, that's the only homework, is that for next week. And then just looking ahead, we're going to discuss on the 11th the rest of the observations, and then on the 18th. And then just to look for the future, for you guys, teaching strategies in book 3 happen in January. Okay. I am doing a course starting after this course on vibrato. So I think you can, I have to double check. I think it says in the, I have to look though, because I can't, depending on the kind of course it is. Some have requirements like books 1 through 3. Vibrato. It doesn't say. So you might be able to take that, but then teaching strategies starts January 10th, and then it's only a 3-week course because it's only 10 hours, and then we immediately go into book 3. Okay, so just if you're looking forward to that. And remember, you guys get $50 off every class, and don't pay attention to what the SAA website says about prices. And then Samantha, you take your 50 off this one and that one. Okay, let's go back. I think, yeah,
a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, they're not related to book 2, but they'll probably take the rest of the time.
Go for it.
There are issues that I've run into teaching this week that I've never run into, that I was curious about your opinion. So I'm having issues. So I'm doing the teaching to the left, which is a new thing for me, which is why I'm running into this problem. I have a 4-year-old that hates it, just won't do it, fights me on it. Obviously, I'm not going to get in a power struggle because they are 4. But they won't let me teach to the left, and it's very hard to obviously, like, they're pre-twinkle, so like placing the violin and doing all of that stuff is really difficult because they want me to be in front of them. Any tips for not getting in a fight with the 4-year-old to say, I'm the teacher, I'm teaching you from the left?
Well, here's the thing. So they actually like say don't stand there?
Yeah. Like it's a full-on fight without me fighting with them. Just me being the teacher, like, no,
Now,
let's
where do you
try this.
when you bow and like you do bow holds and stuff? Where do you stand in front of them?
I try to stay to the left, but like
Okay, well here's the and maybe I because I hammer
the bow hold, I kind of go to the front, or I like them kind of like on the right. I kind of roll around.
yeah, here's what I would do with especially with a student that fights it that much is you're right not to fight with them, but make sure you have your bow, make sure you have your do your bow holds, the tapping, all that stuff do in front of them.
Yeah, I
And
do the
only,
tapping for
and
the
only
front.
move to the left when the violin is on the shoulder. Or you're
Yeah.
doing 1, 2, 3 mouse. But everything else, because that's it, or and playing position steps, you'd be to the left. You know,
Mhm.
anytime there's a violin on the shoulder, or you're working with the left hand, that's when you teach to the left.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
getting to the point of we go to put the violin up and they like melt on the floor. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen, and the
Yep.
parent can't help because the parent's like, "Oh,
Do you teach on wheels?
yeah, I have one of those chairs that you recommended, which I love. It's great."
Wow, you doing teacher training with me really costs.
I know it
a lot
really cost me a lot of money, Mark.
But I tell you what, I use
That chair was really life-changing.
do you know? Do you guys remember what she's talking about? That it's the nail tech chair.
I can go get it. I have to hide it because my son
Yeah, you know
abuses
what?
it.
It has saved. I can't. I mean, I've had that now for a long time. That was the best $80 I've ever spent.
I think mine was 50, so mine was a little cheaper, but
Oh wow! See, that's even better. It. I use it for private lessons. I use it for group class. And the one thing that's great is it gets you on the right level with the little guys, but also it's on wheels, so you can do that. You can wheel from the front to the left, to the front to the left. Yeah, I just think the other thing you can do is start like if she's doing a bow, bow and now zip and step, and then the minute you say C shoulder shoulder, you just go a little bit to the left and put it up there. And then play games with her like what's her name?
it's a boy.
It's okay. So Henry, I'll call him Henry.
That's fine. His name's Forrest.
Forrest. Okay.
For some reason, all my students are boys, which is bizarre. I've never had all boys.
Really?
Yeah, I've always had a couple, but yeah, they are all boys.
And then, okay, Forrest, ready? Point your scroll to Miss Samantha. Or are you Mrs. Gardner?
Miss Sam.
Miss Sam. Okay, point your scroll to Miss Sam. Okay, here comes the sticker. Point your scroll to the sticker. You get the sticker. You pointed your scroll to the sticker. You've gone to the left. He's focused on the sticker. He gets the sticker.
Okay. Yeah, that would work. Stickers are good.
Yeah, so those kind of things, trick him into doing it right. Okay? And definitely don't tell him you're doing it. You just do it.
Yeah.
And maybe do it like that. If you're on wheels, like when that C is going up on the shoulder, you're rolling over to the left with a sticker in your hand. So those kind of things.
Okay. Yeah, that would work.
Yeah. I did this. I don't know if I shared this trick with you guys, but it was maybe the second week of teaching, and my one now she's a second year pre-twinkler, and she just went to a new school, and kids when they first go to a new school, they start to adapt the behavior of kids in the class, which is a normal thing. That's how they learn. And she must have some wild ones in there, because she came in and was just doing all sorts of crazy. And so what I do sometimes, and it only works like once every few months, but I take a plain piece of paper, and I put their initial in block on a piece of paper, and I get out my stickers. Every time you do something, you get a sticker, and you get to fill up your letter, and then they get to take it home and keep filling up their letter name. Just a little positive reinforcement. So instead of saying, oh, you're not behaving, oh, pay attention, let's get our sticker. That seems to work really well for a little bit. It doesn't work like every week, but maybe once a month, maybe once every couple of months. That works pretty well. Stuff like that. Okay, who else has a question? Anything else happening?
I had more questions, sorry.
Okay, go for it. Because, when you have questions, you guys get answers. Everybody gets answers. So.
Okay, so to preface this is probably because of where I live. I live Tucson, which is funny, is very rural, very farm-ish, which is funny because it's desert. Everyone here has a history of mining. And so the people in the families are very aggressive and very abrasive personalities. I also have a very aggressive personality, which you probably wouldn't guess because this is a very professional setting. So yesterday with my kid who has autism, which that doesn't matter, but since I talk about him so much, his mom is a very good friend of mine, which is why this is fine and not gonna hurt our relationship at all. But he tenses his hand really bad when he's playing, and I couldn't figure out why, because he doesn't when we do 1, 2, 3 mouse and stuff, he doesn't do it at all. And then when he goes to normal playing position, he tenses really bad. I figured out why. It's because his nut's really, really high. It needs to be sanded down. But the mom.
Oh, so the string height is really high.
Yeah, the string height's really bad. Well, because I looked, he wasn't doing it anywhere else. I was like, this is the most bizarre thing. So I had him do it on my violin and he wasn't doing it. And so I was like, okay, let me look at this. And that's how I figured it out. Anyway, so when I figured it out, I told the mom and I was like, hey, he needs his nut lowered, take it to the luthier. This isn't a big deal.
Well, can they lower the bridge instead of the nut?
No, because it really is the nut. The nut is
oh, okay.
So it's a cheap Chinese violin. They ordered it off of Amazon. Not great. But the mom, because she's aggressive, got in a fight with me about how it has nothing to do with the violin. It's because he has autism and he has issues with moving his fingers properly. And I was like, no, it really doesn't, he's doing it. Look, it's here. He can do it here. He can do it here. It really is this nut. Go pay $10 and sand it down. But I noticed it was getting aggressive because I'm aggressive. This is our relationship. How do you do it in a professional way? Because that would not fly with any other parent.
Right. Well, first of all, she's not wrong in the sense that it is part of his autism, because he's using large muscles because it's hard to depress the string. So I would say, well, you know what? I totally agree with you, but his large motor skills are going in there because the string is too high. So if we're going for a small fine motor motion here, which is very challenging for him because of his autism, so if we make the instrument more playable, he's going to have an easier time doing it. So it's not she's right, you're wrong, or you're right, she's wrong. You're both right. Let's come to an agreement about that and understand the why. And the reason why you both have your opinions is because you want what's best for Forrest or Henrietta or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? But it's she's, she's constant. And she's not seeing that it's just an instrument. I mean,
Yeah.
but that this will actually make it easier for him.
Yeah, well, because we've set it up really good. And yeah, if we just sand it down, like it will be beautiful and perfect. And so
Yeah. So
you wouldn't even know that he's on the spectrum for this
did she say
specific.
she's not going to do it, or?
I don't know. We'll find out next week. She really dragged her feet and didn't believe me it would make a difference. And like I showed her on my violin and I had her like put her finger there. I was like, look, there's no tension and stuff. So we'll see. We'll find out.
Yeah, do you guys have any other things that could help that? My student Leo, who has autism, he's having some really cool breakthroughs in the private lesson. And he played Flower Song by himself this week. And then, but I said, now, Mom, don't get too excited, because remember, these kind of have, this has an ebb and flow. And, you know, because I think when a student has special needs, one of the hardest things for a parent is they want their child to be what? Normal. Well, what is normal? And so the minute they see some display of normalcy, like being able to play the Flower Song, they want to jump and push to the next thing. So I got a text from her, and she said, "Can Leo come to group class?" Because he came to one group class last year, and it was an epic fail, because he just can't sit still, and he got so overstimulated, and he came this week, and of the 45 minutes, he lasted 15 minutes beautifully. And then he started his thing that he does when he gets overstimulated. He just spins, and he started spinning. And what was cool is Mom's like, "I'm gonna go." I said, "Perfect." And Leo left. And then I asked the parent. I said, "Now, parents," I said, Are we okay if Leo keeps trying to do this? Because Mom's really, she's self-conscious of the fact that she doesn't want to disrupt group class. And they're like, "No." And the one mom was funny. She says, "You spent so much time getting Anna not to disrupt group class last year." She said, "He's fine." So it's hard. It's really hard.
He's very high functioning. Like I wouldn't know he was on the spectrum, except that it's every other sentence that comes out of her mouth. So,
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is it's a nut on a violin.
Yeah.
What is the big deal? But for her that day, that nut was the big deal.
Yeah.
And she wasn't going to hear that it was going to be easier.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's why sometimes whether you agree with her or not, just say, "You know what, I agree. This could be totally," you know what I mean? So it's I hate even say it anymore, but it's like, "I hear you. Let's do this together now." But that's what she kind of needed, I think. Because I do that sometimes. I'm just like, "You're so wrong. Just shut up and do it my way." And but that doesn't really go over with most people.
I think I just didn't think about it just because of her personality, but yeah, that probably was the right answer.
You get back to it in a corner too, so.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. So
I felt bad. I mean, she backs me into a corner all the time, and I back right back into the corner. That's what we do to each other. So, okay. Last question is faster. Different kid, won't practice. It's the age-old doesn't want to practice. I think I figured out the root of the problem. Same aggressive parents. This parent is threatening, like super threatening to this child, and I think that's why they don't want to practice. So like if they don't practice, they have to go move boulders back and forth in the backyard, and like just these like ridiculous things that are like borderline, you're like,
like abusive.
Yeah, borderline abusive. But I think that's what's taking the joy out of them wanting to play the violin, is because the parent is just so on their case and doesn't want to pay for it because they're doing so bad, and they're not doing bad, but they're not practicing. How do I tell the parent to chill out and stop threatening their
Yeah. This is kind of like Sinan's story. How did that go this week, Sinan?
Oh, I just said can you just take a notebook and I'm gonna write down everything he gonna practice. And then magically, I didn't tell the mom not come to the class, but she just herself just wait upstairs, didn't go down until to pick the kid up. And then I think everything was fine, and then they all agree we're gonna have the plan for the practice. But the thing is that the next day or next 2 days, and the mom contact me, this kid just said he practiced like 16 minutes and then finished everything you asked for per day, and then he just stopped practice. I think he should practice like at least 30 minutes. He usually do that. And then but the kid said, you said if you play everything well and you can finish early and then get rest.
Yeah. Tell her, let him be accountable. And if he thinks he did a good job in 16 minutes, that's great. But then he's going to come into his lesson next week and he's accountable to me. And then I will tell him if he needs to practice more and what he needs to practice better. And then I think the only other thing, Samantha, with that child is, and this can be said in front of the parent too, is, okay, now, we'll call him Henry again. Henry, so I want you this week to practice these 4 things with no complaining, nothing. And Mom, if Henry does these 4 things, I want you to say, good job, and he doesn't have to do any extra chores. And then next week we're going to make it 6 things. And then the next week we'll make it 8 things. But so you're kind of, because he's got to practice more, right?
Yeah.
So make it an easier accomplishment. And Mom, I know that you're doing these weird things. So this week, 4 things, great, and he doesn't have to do anything extra. So it is, because he tells you in front of her that he has to move boulders and stuff, right?
Well, she just came in to his lesson and was like, "You're not practicing," and she just kind of took over the lesson and started yelling at him and stuff, and was like, "If you don't start practicing," and I was just like trying to be like, "Oh, let's."
Yeah. So try something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the same solution. I was just like, "Oh, this is aggressive."
Keep me posted for next week. Okay, guys.
Okay.
Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful week. Oh, wait, I got to turn off the recording.